I got the scholarship and went to Pasadena, and then I began what has been a cycle of meeting the most wonderful people in the world. In addition to working for a scholarship, now you work for a year, this got you tuition. You cleaned toilets, you swept floors, you washed windows, you did whatever they wanted you to do. I got a job, was asked to be the electrician in Gilmore Brown's experimental theater. Gilmore Brown was the head of the Pasadena Playhouse, revered by theater people the world over. I was still at that point where I didn't know whether acting or radio or TV would be the main thing. But I had a chance to be the electrician. And I created the first star of my life. I was one night striking this board and getting set for the next night, and a man walked out of the audience to me, and he introduced himself, said he came from Hollywood, and he wanted to meet that young man who had the beard. Could I show him to the dressing room, and he'd take it from there. Well, that young man with the beard went on to star in Golden Boy, was William Holden. So I've always felt that I created William Holden. It was also at that time that I began to run into the likes of Dana Andrews and Robert Preston and Victor Mature. There was never anybody like Victor Mature. When Victor Mature, who was not really a very good actor, but whenever he'd be on the main stage, the women would line up in the alley for half a block. Victor Mature had something animal in him that I decided I sure didn't have. And so I began to think about radio. We had classes there at the Playhouse in radio. And one night, my date and I were going to a dance up on the roof of the Playhouse, and they needed somebody to play the records so that people could dance. And I volunteered. We had a microphone there, and so I played the records, I talked, and I became a disc jockey. Didn't even know it. There was not even a term. That was 1938 or something. I think my poor date was bored as the very difference. But I had a wonderful time, and I decided about then I probably was not going to be the world's greatest actor. That I could be myself, but I could not begin to match the talents of those people that I would see every day out on that West Coast. Nor did I much like the moral values of the community. I was a kid from the West, the cattle country, and I had a lot of learning to do in a hurry there between Pasadena and Hollywood. Came time to graduate from the Playhouse, and I was at a crossroads, whether to join a group of my young aspiring bachelor friends and move to an apartment in Hollywood and struggle for that. But I had seen an advertisement for a director and a teacher of speech at a Catholic church in Milwaukee, and I applied. And the very day that I was forced to make a decision, I got a letter saying, come to Milwaukee. So I came to Milwaukee in 1941, in the spring, spent a summer directing, acting, building sets, and doing all kinds of crazy things with local young people from Milwaukee in a little theater behind a church in Oconomowoc, and teaching priests how to give homilies. There's still a lot of work to be done. When fall came, I decided I really didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't really want to be a director, but I remembered Chicago. So with trunk in hand and suitcase, I got on the train and I came to Chicago. I remember my mother had always said to me, Mal, if you're in a strange town, you can always go to a YMCA. So I got off the train at Chicago Avenue, and lo and behold, there was the Lawson Y right in front of me. I stayed one night. After I got to my room, I asked somebody, what's to do? And they said, well, Bughouse Square is on the... I said, what? I got propositioned 3 times between the Lawson Y and Bughouse Square. I don't know whether that's a record. I was young and tall and blonde and skinny and like that. Then I started in Chicago, making the rounds. I joined a little theater group directed by a Jewish lady named Min Gallitzer. Very fine talent. Had a theater down on South Wabash. I believe it is the same facility now that the Hubbard Street Dancers used to rehearse in. But we had a good little theater group going there. And in addition to that, there was a, what was it, NRA? It was like the CCC. It was one of those things with letters to it where you got $25 a month or something. And people wrote scripts, so we did little shows on JJD and on CFL. And it was a lot of fun. So I'm experimenting with radio, making the rounds, agencies, producers, radio stations, getting turned down right and left, acting in a little theater. Came December 7th, 41, Pearl Harbor. On that afternoon, I proposed to a young lady named Jo Morrissey, who was from Milwaukee, who was a fine actress, a fine scriptwriter, and really much more talented than I. We went over to Holy Name Cathedral and copped a plea because you don't get married in Advent time. We got married, and on the 19th, we had a 2-day honeymoon, and I left for the Army. I spent